Jennifer Friend. How do I start? If you're just jumping in, we had a whole bunch of fun dialogue just now that we probably can't repeat. It's probably good, cold, and have it running.
Yes.
But welcome, Jennifer Friend. I'm so happy
you.
to have you here. Honest to goodness, you're one of my favorite people.
Oh, thank you.
And we haven't known each other that long, but it doesn't feel that way.
Totally agree.
And the world's getting smaller and smaller. We were just talking about we've had mutual crossovers. Like we were introduced by friends or kind of people that you grew up with and I grew up with. And then just recently, Danny Nichols, who I interviewed here a few weeks ago. You guys have a connection, and we're going to have another roundtable connection. He was one of the guys that I was hoping to connect us with. So very fun and cool to make these kind of interesting small world stuff. But I call this my Mark Shoeline passion project. It truly is just my opportunity to talk to really cool people doing really good stuff for the world. And you today, Jennifer Friend, are that person.
Thank you,
welcome
Mark.
and thank you.
Thank you.
You are very welcome. The goal of today is I want to capture your story. I've heard bits and pieces of it. I've read bits and pieces of it, both kind of your private life that brought you to where you are and your public life and what you're doing with this amazing organization as their CEO. And I think that for me, connecting all the dots, and I think for other people to connect all the dots as to how you got here as the leader of Project Hope Alliance would be super interesting, compelling to talk about, because again, I know bits and pieces, but what you do, and we'll definitely get into that. We'll call that chapter 2. Chapter 1 is going to be more about you and the path that got you here, if that's cool.
Yeah.
So let me start, if I can, I'm going to start with kind of a statement and a question, and then I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay.
So here we are. We're sitting in beautiful Newport Beach, Costa Mesa, right?
Yep.
And it's a stunning day, and we're probably 3 miles from, one of we're within a demographic area that's incredibly high.
Right.
We're in a destination community where people travel from all over the world to come here to see it. It's known for beauties on silly TV shows that make us look even worse than we are. But it is a beautiful, desirable, high net worth, some of the highest. But that's not the only story.
Right.
There's another story. And there's terms around it like somewhat invisible, in the shadows, et cetera. And that's an area that you know a lot about. And so what is that other side of this community that you're so aware of and involved in?
Well, without fast forwarding to chapter 2, I can definitely tell you're absolutely right. So we kind of talk at Project Hope Alliance about the tale of two cities. We have, as you pointed out, I think that Forbes just ran an article saying that some of the most expensive homes in the entire world are just right down the street, right? Yeah. But we also have over 23,000 students experiencing homelessness that have been identified in Orange County's public school system.
Just stop.
Yep.
How many?
Over 23,000.
Just in Orange County?
Just in Orange County. In the entire state of California, there are enough identified kids experiencing homelessness to fill Dodger Stadium up 5 times over.
And you're using the term identified. What would you guess then as the unidentified number? Is it 2x, 3x? I mean, what's your professional opinion based on what you know that it really is?
Yeah, and it's not even like the Jennifer Friend professional opinion. It's actually data driven. So we know that it's a 3x. So for every 1 kid that's identified, there are another 3 behind them that are not.
It's wild. So let's do this. That you just set the stage perfectly for what we're going to talk about. And those numbers are staggering, and I know we'll get back to more stats. But again, let's just talk real quick about that invisibility.
Yeah. How
visible are those kids, these people? Do people that are sitting in class next to them know this? Or is it super? It's not homelessness on the street that we're talking about.
Right.
This is different.
Right.
I don't want to go too far into it, but man, it's everywhere. Every school?
It's at every school. I mean, and I can give you a real life personal example. So my daughter, who went to Ensign Intermediate School, who's now in college.
Hold on. Where is she in college?
At University of Oregon. Go Ducks! Where are your kids in college, Mark?
At University of Oregon. It's amazing.
It is.
Now, usually you wear.
And we just beat
You're
USC.
usually wearing Oregon green,
Sorry,
and you're not today,
for
which I was a
viewership.
little surprised by because I was like, She always dresses it, but you didn't.
I know. No,
You're
because
so professional
I'm
today.
branded.
Yes, well done.
But it's not green. Yeah.
It's all good. Okay, but you were going back to this individual.
Yeah, so my daughter comes home one day and we're sitting on the couch and she kind of looks like pensive, like reflective. And I was like, "Hey, Peanut, what's up? Like, anything you want to talk about?" And she said, Mom, you know how you talk about how you would never know that someone's experiencing homelessness, like a kid?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, I was in class today and I forgot my notebook." So I turned to my friend who was sitting next to me, who she'd known for 2 years at that point, and asked for a piece of paper. Her friend opened up her notebook and there was a Project Hope Alliance application on the left-hand side of it. And Parker said, "You're absolutely right, Mom. We never would have known. I only knew because I know what Project Hope Alliance does, but she never acted like she was going through anything hard. She never told me or anyone else that I know of that she was going through anything hard." And so when we look at the data and we look at that, like, only one out of every 4 or every 3 are identified, we know that our kids are in class with kids who are sleeping in motels, who are doubled or tripled up. Some families are actually renting space on a kitchen floor for their kids to sleep right down the street.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And so it is very hidden, and it's hidden on purpose. I know, and we'll get into it later, my family hid the fact that we were living in motels and couch surfing while I was in middle school and high school, because especially when you're a kid, the last thing you want to do is be different. And if you're a parent, the last thing you want to do is draw the eyes of attention. Maybe you don't realize that experiencing homelessness isn't a crime. You don't want social services coming and taking your kids away from you. You're working, hoping that you're going to change the financial dynamic. And so you try to do your best to conceal those things and just show up every day, trying to be as regular as you can. And I think that with that invisibility, at least for me, comes a lot of shame, comes a lot of missed opportunity for us to understand that everybody's going through something. I mean, just because you live in the most affluent zip code doesn't mean that your family might not be struggling with illness, divorce, mental health challenges, addiction challenges. I mean, we all have something that we're going through, and we all have something that we can do to support someone, right? Yeah. And so hopefully when we lift that invisibility, we allow for our kids to truly be seen for who they are, not where they're sleeping at night, not what their parents' economic situation is, but like who they are inside. And then everyone gets to show up for each other in community. And that's really the rad thing about the work that we're doing, I think.
That's so cool. And you've taken us further down. There's 2 things in there. One, your use of rad is one of my favorite things about you.
I'm never going to stop.
I use
53,
I use it all the time. That's why I like you. Like, your use of language is one of my favorite things. There are certain words you just have to use sometimes. Yeah. Not a lot of people get away with using rad. I use it all the time. You do, and it's one of the things that it's so endearing about you. But taken back, what you were just saying, I couldn't stop knowing what I know, and I want to get it out here. The kind of dissertation you just provided, was that Jennifer Friend, CEO of Project Hope Alliance, or Jennifer Friend, I grew up that way? Can you talk a bit about how you grew up? And I'm sure that's what led you here, and we'll get there. But like what you just said, I think probably touches on a lot of it. But can you kind of shine a light a little bit more on your personal experience with this?
Yeah, so this is my community. Where we're sitting is, I used to live on Santiago in an upper middle class home with my 3 brothers and my parents. My dad was an entrepreneur. He had this crazy idea in the late 70s that one day everyone was going to carry around a personal phone.
Impossible. It would never happen.
No, that's what everyone told him.
Oh, wow.
So he was out there hustling as an entrepreneur to get people to invest in this idea that he had, and then go to Korea to build prototype models.
Total visionary.
Absolutely a visionary,
Incredible.
A total dreamer, someone who was able to foresee things as a visionary that were coming around the bend. The challenge was
he was a little too far ahead of it.
He was too far ahead of it. I also think that at some point when we were living in poverty and we were getting evicted all the time and we're living in motels, he kept thinking that when he hit it big, that the money would somehow make up for everything that we had been through, instead of having kind of like the clarity to understand that as a father, all we wanted was stability, and it didn't need to be on East Oceanfront. It could be at an apartment around the corner. Yeah. We just wanted a place to call home that we...
But he was the serial optimist. Typical sales, maybe not typical, but a not uncommon trait. Sales always be selling, I'm always that close. That next one's going to hit. I'm almost there.
Yep.
We're going to get it.
Yep. And he would have these moments where it would happen. So he was on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. You know, there were these moments that would feed him and fuel him, and he would have opportunities to sell his business, but he kept thinking, no, I'm going to wait for the next big one. And then we'd run out of money. I remember the first time that I'm aware of being evicted was when I was in 6th grade. I was going to Newport Elementary. We lived in this 5-bedroom house on East Oceanfront. And
you weren't kidding.
No. First, the electricity got turned off. Next, the gas got turned off. And then the water got turned off. So our house had one of those alley access showers, so you didn't have to like bring your sand all through the house. So my brothers and I would put on our bathing suits. My dad would hook up a hose to the neighbor's spigot and would literally hose us down in that outside shower so that we could take showers. We would have friends that would want to come over after school, and we'd have to like come up with ways to explain, they're doing work on the electrical, and that wasn't something that ever came natural to me, because I'm very, you get what you see. I'm a very kind of transparent person, but to protect our family, we had to start coming up with lies, basically, and excuses for why we were going through things. And so that house was the first house that we were evicted from, and we went from there to a motel in Garden Grove. We lived at the Tropic Motel on Harbor Boulevard for 10 months straight, which my brothers at the time were probably 4, 6, and 7. And there were 6 of us in a 214 square foot motel room. And that was something that my family went in and out of all of my middle school and high school years. So we stayed with a friend of ours who lived in Newport Shores. My brother and I, the 4 of us slept in the den. And then it started getting kind of weird because I was getting older and my brothers were getting older. And so then I went to stay with a friend during the week. So I lived with her my sophomore year and then part of my senior year. But yeah, so when I'm talking about that shame and having to kind of hide, that was something that I always felt as a kid. And quite honestly, until I was 42 and my story ended up on the front page of the newspaper, that was not something I ever expected. I always carried around with me, if people knew who I really was, they wouldn't like me. I mean,
that's tough for kids to feel that way, right? And you got to fake it all the time.
Yeah, and the whole imposter syndrome thing had a whole nother depth of meaning. And it's so, as I get older, and I think we all get older, and we're raising kids and really trying to show up intentionally for our kids and healing things that maybe we have carried over from our childhood, I realize how powerful those narratives, like those middle school narratives are that we created in our head, whether it's, I'm not good enough, people wouldn't like me if they knew who I really was. I mean, I'm 53 and I'm not going to lie. There are sometimes I show up having been invited to share Project Hope and share my personal story, and I'll look out into the crowd and there are people that maybe I am at cocktail parties with, but they don't know my story. And I go back to that seventh grade, little girl at the Tropic Motel feeling like I'm not enough.
Well, I mean, thank you for sharing. I think about all kids at that age, or adults even. I mean, there's such an underlying lack of confidence and feeling of just wanting to be accepted, and it's hard. Reef, my youngest, he's in 6th grade, and he's starting to experience that now. It's hard in the best of times, without the financial strife or the parental strife or any of the other things that come with, growing up. It's interesting, and you know the story, but I grew up not in this space, but very aware of it because my mom, who you've met,
love your mom.
My mom was passionate about shining a light on family homelessness in Orange County, and she was very involved with organizations just like yours, and she was a very good keynote speaker. Still, she's my superhero mom. She always said, and she said it all the time, many, many, many families are just one event away from homelessness, one illness, one job loss, one accident, one whatever. And probably now more than ever because things are so expensive and housing is so tight. And it's the same story that I grew up hearing 40 years ago. It's super rewarding knowing that there's people like you on the front lines of it because it hasn't gone away. It's a super hard thing to resolve, but Project Hope Alliance, which we'll talk more about in a bit, is doing such a great job at that. And there's lots of other organizations that focus on this, but that's what it takes, and it takes a community, and that's again, if you have a superpower, I think it's the community part, but we'll get to that. But let me ask you this: how do you cope with that when you're in your junior high and high school age, and your impostor syndrome, or you're faking it to how did you and your brothers manage through that, and then how did you keep on going? Maybe those two questions: how did you cope and deal, and then how did you keep on pursuing a dream, because you kept on going?
Yeah.
Can you talk about those two things?
Yeah. So this is probably going to sound a little bit corny, but it's the truth, and you'll appreciate it. How did I keep going? So that time at the Tropic Motel when I was in middle school, I played Boy and War, the cassette tape, U2, on my Walkman on repeat. And I will say that the power of music was something that really spoke to me because and I'm still I just got back from Vegas, got to see them at the Sphere, which was...
you did?
Yes.
Okay, we'll talk about that later.
That was incredible. But the power of the arts, I think, because I didn't feel that I could share what I was going through externally, to people who are outside of myself and outside of my parents and my family and even my mom and dad. I never wanted to be an additional burden or worry for my parents. I knew how bad they already felt and how much they were already going through.
So you had that awareness already. I mean, you were cognitively aware of what was going on around you and your family. Yeah.
So as I got older and after my dad passed away, I went to therapy for the first time. I realized that at that time, I felt like my needs were a luxury.
I felt like my needs were a luxury. Ooh, wow. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, so I needed to be able to be scared and sad and angry and confused and share all of the emotions I was going through because I was going back from, Dwyer Middle School in Huntington, where my friends, lived in Seacliff and my friends lived in Newport, and I was going back to a motel room. And I needed to be able to process that, all of those feelings. And I needed someone to be able to show up for me and let me be the kid and process those feelings. But that was a luxury in that dynamic.
Was there anybody that could fulfill that for you at that time?
No. Yeah. So what I would say is that both of my parents were very loving and very nurturing. but we didn't talk about what was going on. So I was definitely nurtured and definitely loved and definitely encouraged, but we did it like on top of the mess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, kind of buried that one. And
yeah. And so that's where I think that music was something, and particularly, you get some punk Irish dudes who are coming from a country that has faced a lot of tremendous struggles,
is this your
tenacity.
Love for You Too? Starts right then?
So
Got
much.
it.
And the lyrics spoke to me because it made me feel not alone. So even though, and that's what I hope for our kids, is that in lifting the invisibility, they realize that they're not alone in this. So, but my faith was a driving factor. So, that was something that we always went to church on Sunday. And how did I know to keep going forward? Well, there was one night when I was in that motel room and I had gotten a part in a play that I really wanted to be in at my middle school. And I auditioned for the part and I got the part I wanted. And that night I was sharing it with my parents and I saw my mom's face and she had tears in her eyes. And she said, "I am so sorry, sweetheart, but you can't be in the play." Because we didn't have enough gas money for my parents to drive from the motel to Garden Grove to Huntington Beach to take me to and from the rehearsals. And so I remember thinking, why the heck should I even try? Like, what's the point of me having dreams, having aspirations, and trying, and then because of something completely outside of my control, I can't even realize them? And in that moment, I believe it was the Holy Spirit said to me, it's not always going to be like this. Like, you just have to have faith and just keep trying anyway. And so I just kept trying. Yeah.
Well, I know that your faith comes back later. We'll get to that because that's one of my favorite stories. Did you get to do the part?
I didn't.
Oh.
But when I got into high school, there were a lot of families. I was in Model United Nations, and I was really good, which makes sense why I ended up picking a original profession that paid by the word, because I was very good in debate. And so we would have conferences at Harvard, at Georgetown. And so the community, the parents of my friends, sponsored me to do all of those things. So I was able to realize my dreams in those moments by continuing to try. So maybe that one thing wasn't the thing, but life is long. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So I was able to see some of my, dreams to fruition as a teenager.
Well, clearly you're an underachiever, which is what I love about you. Because you were doing all this Model United Nations and all this stuff, even while you guys were dealing with some of these financial challenges. How much of what you just described about what you experienced personally is what you see in the kids that you serve today? Or is there 18 million different iterations of how people respond to the situations that they're in?
So everyone is a human and they all come with their own stuff. So yes, there are different responses, right? My brothers and I were fortunate that we did have two supportive parents, and so we still kind of kept on the right track, if there's such a thing as a right track. We dodged some of the bullets, I guess I would say, like that you could come into play. But there is a total consistency in narrative between kids just feeling like, I have these dreams, and I have these things I want to do, and I have ways that I want people to see me, right? I want them to see me as a musician or a lacrosse player or what have you. But I don't know how to make those things a reality because of things outside of my control. And so that's one of the reasons why we say we do whatever it takes. So filling in those gaps and getting the cleats for the kid or getting the instrument for the kid or letting them know, hey, this is something that you're passionate about. We're going to show up for you. You keep trying. And we've got you covered. We'll make it possible. We'll make it so for you to be able to do these things. Because at the end of the day, these kids just want to be able to be themselves and lean into all of their strengths because they have so many of them.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know some of the statistics of the successes from Project Hope Alliance you'll share in a bit that reinforce exactly what you're doing works on those kids, leaning into their strengths. I love that. But let's keep going with you, because you started to touch on some of the things that you were doing during your high school years. Talk about going through high school, living that way, and how you then went on to college and law school. How did you navigate that, maybe from the financial side and just the support, whatever? Because again, everybody's human, everybody has different ways, but with what you were dealing with, how did you continue to keep the pedal down to go where you ultimately were able to go?
So I started, we lived in Newport Shores for a period, and things were getting really bad money-wise. So I started a babysitting business to help out my parents, to like buy groceries and stuff like that. And so then when I turned 15, I got a worker's permit. By this time we were living in Huntington. So I worked at a surf shop on Main Street, old school Main Street.
Which shop?
Beachcombers.
Beachcombers.
Yes.
Yep. It was up on the left, if I recall, like on the corner.
Right by
maybe?
Sugar Shack.
Yep.
Yes. Best tuna fish sandwich.
That's good. Oh, Sugar Shack. And they support kids in that community.
They're amazing.
Big time. Let me ask you a question. We're just stop there. Do you know how many homes you lived in or places you resided, not homes, between, until the time you graduated high school?
So I watched Danny's interview and I saw he had 26. So I stopped counting. What I can tell you is I think I've lived on almost every street in a winter rental on the numbered streets on the peninsula.
Wow.
And
there's 63 streets or something
yeah,
like that.
I would say that there was a season where we probably lived in 4 winter rentals a year because you didn't need a deposit or credit. You just paid cash for the period that you were staying. So when things started doing a little bit better, but they weren't great enough for us to like get an actual place, we'd move out of the motel and into a winter rental. For sure, over 20 places.
Wow. I'll let you and Danny arm wrestle over who had more.
Yeah, I've stayed in most of the motels that have been around for a long time on Harbor Boulevard and Garden Grove Boulevard and Beach Boulevard. So like the Costa Mesa Motor Inn, we stayed there. We used to go across the street to Kmart to play the demo versions of the Atari.
You're going to date us again.
I know. Now. That's okay.
Well, listen, I giggled and made light of the number of homes Danny and you. It's staggering to me to consider that. I think, my kids have been in, 2 or 3 homes in their life, maybe 4. To have that lack of stability and the fear of not knowing when that next one's going to happen, it's got to be super difficult. And from a parent, everything about it has got to be horrendously challenging.
It is, and also too, we lost all of our stuff almost every time we got evicted. So you would accumulate, so like maybe we lived on East Ocean Front for like 2 years. So my bedroom was like set up with everything from the Rick Springfield poster to Date Us Again to like all my stuff. Well, we would stay until we just like had like the marshal was there and was like, you got to get out. So we would leave all of our furniture. So the next place that we would move into, we had to start over completely. So I can remember being a sophomore in high school and never using a nail to hang anything up on my wall, only using tape, and not having, I would had a mattress on the floor. I didn't have any furniture in my room. Like we were in Seacliff in this like 5-bedroom house with no furniture, just mattresses in each of the bedrooms.
So it's a step up from a motel, but you're not living.
No, and people are like, what's up? Like, what is up with this situation? And so like all of our childhood pictures are gone, like all that stuff. And this is our families at Project Hope. Like there's a whole nother component to that. You feel like you're constantly losing your identity and you can never settle. Like, we come home and we're like,
yeah,
right? That's our safe place. But if you come home, but you look around and like none of your stuff is there, and then you're like, oh wow, that's right. Like we lost all of our stuff. It doesn't feel like home. It just feels like a building.
Like a constant state of limbo.
Yeah.
which for kids, that, as you said at the beginning, really just want stability.
Yeah. And so I guess going back to your question, in high school, as I said earlier, I never wanted to be a burden to my parents. So I would do what I could. I always worked while I was in school to help contribute to our like paying bills and things like that. And kind of my form of protest was not so lame, not doing math and science homework. So I could get an A in AP English and MUN with like no problem.
What's MUN?
Model United Nations.
Oh, got it. Okay.
But
for those of us that were
yes.
not capable of being in that at the time or now.
Or just not as much of a nerd as me. You know.
Probably the prior. But.
So I didn't do my homework. And I really struggled with this whole fear of failure thing. And so I kind of was like, so much stuff is outside of my control that like, why don't I just not even try with math and science? So ironically, I almost didn't graduate high school. And I didn't even tell my parents this until I was in my 40s. I was voted to give the graduation speech at my high school.
Underachiever.
And I was failing geometry. So I walked into the teacher and said, hey, I don't know if you know this, but I'm not going to graduate in like 2 days because I'm failing geometry. And she's like, no, because no one knew what I was going through. Everyone thought, oh, she's going away to college, like blah, blah, blah.
The smart girl.
Yeah. So she looked at my grade and was like, oh my gosh. Well, it's a good thing for you that I'm retiring this year. So she gave me a C- in geometry. So I knew we didn't have money for me to even apply to go to college. So I went to Golden West. Like I knew that's just what I'm going to do. So I went to community college, worked 50 hours a week and went to school full time. Then
Hold on. Back up. You did what?
Worked 50 hours a week.
Okay. Doing what?
I worked at Lohman's. I was an assistant manager at Lohman's for 4 years, and I also worked at Marie Callender's as a waitress, as well as at Nordstrom during the seasonal sales, and then I did catering.
This is all at the same time?
Yeah.
While you're carrying a full load?
Yeah.
Where were you living at that time?
So I got my own apartment with roommates when I was 20 because I couldn't handle the kind of like the chaos of it. And I felt like if I could stabilize myself, then I could be more helpful to my brothers also. So I lived in an apartment in Huntington. And then
with roommates and some stability.
Yeah.
Was that your first memory of maybe not adult, but like adulting stability?
Yeah, where I felt like I had at least some control. I mean, I was helping support my family a lot, so I would move back home at different times, so that instead of paying rent to like someone else, I could help. And I didn't get my driver's license until I was 21 because we didn't have a car for me to use to get a license. So then when I got a car, total beater car, that was the only car in my family. So my parents would like use that car. And then I transferred to UCI. Didn't know until my last year at UCI that there was such a thing as a Pell Grant.
I'm not familiar with, I know the term, but I don't know the details, what it takes to secure a Pell Grant.
Yeah, so you have to be living under the poverty line. But if you are, then you are entitled to full financial payment for your education.
Wow.
So here I was, like, working
87 hours
all
a week.
these jobs, right? And someone said, but people looked at me and they made lots of assumptions about.
And you were happy with that because that was the illusion you were trying to present.
I was feeding into it.
However, because of that, no one thought to go, hey, Jennifer, do you know about the Pell Grant?
Yeah.
And you didn't have an advocate because you were trying not to need one that weren't as accessible. But I'm guessing, to jump the shark, Project Hope Alliance is really good at providing that type of information today.
That is why we exist.
Hallelujah. Okay, but we're going to keep going about you.
Yeah.
So you're at UCI. Let me stop and say something. Like, everything you're saying makes me want to go, my kids are watching this whole darn interview. Because I tell the story, like, a big reason that I'm glad my kids are not going to school in California or Texas like so many, they're up in Oregon, because there's more financial diversity available to them. When they go out to lunch or dinner with a bunch of buddies or friends and somebody can't afford a piece of pizza, for them it's eye-opening. And they need to have their eyes open that when you grow up above the line here in town, there are so many aspects of what you're talking about that they need to hear, oh, you had to do this and this and this and this while having this impacting. Like, it's an incredible story, Jennifer, and that's really why I wanted to talk to you today, because it's, again, these are parts I didn't know, but I didn't have to do that. Like, I was fortunate enough. My parents paid for my college as long as I didn't, I had a 3.0 to go. You keep a 3.0 and we'll pay for school. Anything below that, you're on your own. That was a good deal for me. It was a great deal for me. And where I went to school, I didn't know a lot of people that were working their whole way through. My business partner, Matt, yourself, my parents. My parents had nothing. They're self-made. I mean, they had to build it all. So when I hear stories like this, it's so important to have it out there, because lots of people around here, growing up here, need to know not only what it takes for a lot of people, but what it takes for a lot of people right here in our neighborhood.
Yeah, and I think that, I also acknowledge that there are a lot of other things that I didn't have to go through that some of my friends went through that may have had affluence, but maybe they didn't have two parents that like showed up for them, right?
For sure.
So there's no like worse hard thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I am, my brothers and I talk a lot about why do we think that we've been successful as entrepreneurs? And it's because we were selling strawberries on the side of Beach Boulevard, like 4 blonde-head kids with our flat of strawberries on Beach Boulevard when we were like in elementary and middle school. We can reverse engineer the heck out of any challenge or problem, and that serves us very well when we're building businesses. It served me very well when I was a trial lawyer. I had the ability to relate to a broad swath of people because I have had a breadth of life experiences, and I don't really fit in any box. And so I think that is something that I'm very proud of. And I wouldn't be who I am today if I hadn't gone through those things. And I feel that there are character traits that I'm proud to show to my kids. My husband also, he's did it all himself as well. He started as valet parker, started a valet parking business, ended up doing really well, put himself through school. I mean, so he and I are both come from that same kind of self-starter type of mentality. And I think it's important for our kids to see that it's your effort, right? So it doesn't matter where you start, it's where you finish. And I'm proud that my brothers and I have been able to take these life experiences and find strengths and assets that have come out of them.
Well, it sure seems like it served you well, because your career path, and now so you get into UCI. Did you learn about the Pell Grant at that time, or were you self-funding that? How did UCI come about?
So I didn't know about the Pell Grant when I first went to UCI. It wasn't until, and it took me 7 years to get through undergrad. When I went first to UCI as a transfer student, my dad really wanted me to have the dorm experience. Like, he was feeling really bad because my brothers all played college football. So they all got full ride scholarships to University of Pennsylvania, University of San Diego, Cal Poly San Luis. I didn't play football. So I had a different path.
Hold on, did one of your brothers go to USD?
Yeah.
We didn't. I went to USD.
Oh, you
I'm
did?
a Torero.
Yes, Jason.
He
He played football there.
Well, the bar is pretty low on that football team.
Yeah, that's why he stopped
Okay, just
playing
saying.
after his sophomore year.
I mean, who wants to be called a Torero? What is that?
It's a great
It's
school,
a
though.
bullfighter, but it sounds like a little mole or like some
It does.
little
It doesn't.
marsupial.
It doesn't match anything remotely scary.
But it was a beautiful school, and I was very fortunate to get in there. Again, not having to rely on a Pell Grant or scholarship or anything else. I mean, there's a giant disparity, and it's, again, I love what you just said about all the traits that you all were able to leverage or continue to leverage, because you start to see these things. So you go to UCI.
Yeah.
After Golden West and working 87 hours
and I'm
week.
still working, right? So
Yep.
that didn't stop. So I move into the dorms. Unfortunately, my dad couldn't pay the housing bill. So at the time, UCI had a policy that you couldn't return as a student if you owed any debt. So I had to quit UCI for a year and get another job on top of the other jobs I had to pay off the housing debt. The school, that is no longer a policy. And then I went back to UCI, and it was my last year at UCI that I learned about the Pell Grant, which what that did was it enabled me to get a car, which I had like $2,000 left over to like get a car. So you can imagine how great that car was. One point it didn't have brakes, but I just made right-hand turns. I just figured out a way to get from Irvine to Huntington by only making right-hand turns. So I would pump the brakes and throw the car into park when I would get up to a stop sign or a red light, and then just pray that like either the car would stop or I could just make that right.
That's an incredible story. Like, is that real?
It is real.
That's unbelievable.
Yes. My husband found out about that. We were just friends. And he found out about that and was so horrified that he started driving to Huntington to pick me up from work, even though like I was dating some other guy, because he was like, you can't go in a car that has no brakes.
I'm horrified, but super impressed. That's incredible. Your
you
story
do what
is
you have to do, right? Like
and
that's just.
And you've had to do a lot.
Yeah. So I graduated UCI. I knew I wanted to go to law school, be a lawyer. So I found a program at Whittier Law School that you could do 3 years of law school in 2.5 years, because I already felt so far behind the 8 ball. Also, too, and this is actually, we talk a lot about why don't we have executive CEO diversity at the highest levels, like in the business community,
Sure.
healthcare, all of that. Well, and this is to generalize, but proportionately, students of color are the students who are on Pell Grants, who are on need-based scholarships. If you are also having to work and go to school full-time, you don't have the ability to be academically competitive with your peers. So you could be the smartest kid in the classroom, but if you've got like 1 hour to study for all your classes because you don't get off your waitressing shift until midnight, you're not going to get the same grades as people who are just showing up as students.
For sure.
So my grades weren't academically competitive to go to like UCLA or Cal, but I got into Whittier. So I did law school. You were not allowed to work your first year of law school. So
How did you cheat? How did you hide that?
well, I got my grandfather to loan me money for my first year, but my little brother had to give the title to his car to my grandpa in order
As
for
collateral?
as collateral, which is whatever. It worked out. Thank you, Josh. But so my first year I didn't work. And then I ended up getting married my second year. So that definitely helped my situation.
Rob's a good guy.
Really good guy. Yeah.
Good. And for the record, Rob is Rob Smith, not from The Cure,
No.
not from the NBA or the NFL.
NFL, yes.
Not from the NFL.
No.
And you opted, we talked about this earlier, to keep your last name because it's friggin' cool.
It is really cool. And like I told you, I didn't really feel like it was fair that 3 chicks got to take the friend name and like the OG chick had to give it up.
I'm a firm believer.
So
I fully support it.
And if you can imagine, so, lawyer Jen, as a trial lawyer, when the judge says, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I'd like to introduce you to Miss Friend, who's representing the defense. I feel like the jurors were a little bit more receptive to me. Like, oh, what a sweet, she's our friend.
Little did they know.
Yeah, you got to take whatever you have, right? That's all about using the tools that you have.
100%. Okay, so you go on to be a lawyer and you're doing trial law for how long?
I practiced law for 13 years.
Got it. And you had aspirations that you told me about once before that I love. So can you tell us you had a very clear goal. Like you weren't stopping. You were going to be a trial. After your stint in law, you wanted to continue on. Can you tell us what that was going to look like?
Yeah. So I kind of like back to the middle school Jennifer. I felt like if I accomplished things and I continued professionally to like get to different levels, that somehow it would make me more worthy of the life that I had and the friends that I had, and just like to take up space. So I made partner at 38, and then I wanted to be a judge. And then my thought was I was going to run for Congress or Senate. That was the life trajectory that I had kind of like set out for myself.
Yeah. But then you had a pivot.
Yes.
Tell us, you told me the story. It goes back to what you mentioned before. Can you tell us I don't know what was happening in between. It sounds like you had you had been interviewing for something. Tell us what happened how did you start to pivot from this current position as partner, thinking about becoming a judge? It sounded more last time like you were planning, like you had a very methodically planned.
Oh no, I had a plan.
Yeah. And then Senate, Congress, whatever it would be. But you pivoted. What was the genesis of that pivot?
So my brother Jason calls me one night and says, "Hey, I just saw this thing called The Motel Kids of Orange County. It's a documentary on HBO. I want you to watch it, and then I want you to call me back." And so I was like, okay. So I watched it, and it was about how Project Hope started. And it was about this one school that served students experiencing homelessness, and this basically like a foundation that raised money to provide busing to and from different motels and shelters to this one school. And so I watched the documentary, and it broke my heart for a number of reasons. It followed kids back to the motel, which, if I'm being totally transparent, like I think that it crossed the line into exploitation. I worry about how those kids saw themselves after that documentary, and how they possibly internalized that was their whole story versus it just being a chapter because of the way that it was done.
Got it.
At the same time, it was used as a catalyst for me. So I saw it, I called my brother, and I was like, wow, I think we need to do something. So he's like, okay, I'm going to find out where this organization meets, like where their board meets. I think we should show up and just like find out how we can support them. Because by this time, my brothers were all doing very well in business. I was doing well at my firm. So we had money, and our thought was, how do we donate? How do we become donors? So went into the board meeting. It was a group of like beautifully hearted folks. Their total operating budget was like $30,000. And I walked out the secretary of the board because the chair of the board was this guy by the name of Hayes Drumright, who had just founded this small little tech company called Trace3. And I think that I feel like he had 15 employees at Trace3 at the time. It sold for like $1.3 billion, like not that long ago. And he now owns 2 amazing wineries and is doing incredible things for first-gen students. But so I was like, what just happened? So I start volunteering, and I start feeling like, and I said to the board, hey, I'm going to share with you my personal story, but like this is not for public consumption. Nobody knows this. Even my friends, my best friends from high school, they don't know anything about this story.
So you were, let's stop for a second. 20 years worth of this, or close at that time. Nobody knew.
Yeah.
Nobody knew. You guys were all...
My best friend was the only person who knew.
Wow. Well, that's incredible, but it also reinforces how hard it must be to wear all of those different, you're living kind of a fake cover-up.
Yeah.
To protect your self-esteem and reputation and whatever you perceive as being protected. But that's amazing.
Yeah, it's a lot of
work.
And that's exactly right. I didn't realize how much work it took for me to put on masks and try to compartmentalize who I was and not show up as my whole self until I finally got to just be Jennifer.
Wow. Yeah, mask was the word I was grasping for. But yeah, a lot of masks.
Yep.
And a lot of work. Not just overt, but tons of covert work.
It is. And I just didn't want anyone to think my parents were like bad people. Yeah. At the bottom of it, I didn't want anyone to judge my parents. And then I also was dealing with my own incredible insecurity. Because I remember one time my dad said to me, because I came to him in tears in like 8th grade, and I was like, I can't lie anymore. Like, I can't even remember what stories I'm telling people. I just want to tell my friends. And my dad said to me, if they know, they won't like you. Here's the thing. As a parent now, I can totally appreciate why my dad said that, because he was trying to protect me. Like, he believed that the best layer of protection that he could afford me was to help maintain this mask. But that narrative just stuck right like at the foundational place of building my character. So
well, it's also, it's so much responsibility that most kids that don't have to experience or don't experience such a lifestyle never conceive of. Like, most kids that age are very selfish and self-focused. As I said at my daughter at the time, I love Mia, but if it wasn't in her phone or in the mirror, it didn't exist. And yet, when your life, you're focused on, I don't want my parents to get hurt. What do people think about me? Like, it's the wrong term, but it's a cover-up that you have to work so hard to maintain.
And that's why my needs were a luxury. That's like where that came from, right? Because it takes all this energy to cover up what it is that you actually need, which is for someone to just see you and acknowledge what you're going through and let you know that it's really hard, but that you're there in it. And then you have the joy to know, like now, like our friendship. I know that you like me for who I am. I'm not worried, does Mark, what if he finds out about... No, I'm showing up as my whole self. I don't have to worry about that anymore. I just get the joy of like knowing that I have real connection with people. But so I told the board that I'm not doing this for like public consumption. I'm keeping the story.
And this was just the secretary role for the board? Yeah. Okay.
And
little did you know.
Yes. So I ended up becoming the chair of the board. And
hold on. That doesn't happen overnight. You became the chair of the board, which is like president of the board. You run the board. How long did that process take? How long were you involved with the board from secretary, when you walk in as secretary, until you are a member of the board and then becoming chair of the board?
A year.
Wow. Well, we also know, for those of us that have worked with nonprofits, we're always looking for good people ready to step in.
That's right. And Hayes had done such a phenomenal job chairing the board that we talked about, like, hey, we need to make a real transformational impact. The work that we're doing, the busing, like writing a check to support kids getting to school, we're all for that. But we need to dream bigger for our kids, and we need to do something more that's actually going to disrupt generational homelessness and change the trajectory. So what I found when I was trying to talk to folks about homelessness in Orange County was a real disconnect in understanding what it looks like for families and kids. Because, like you said at the very beginning, we're not seeing them sleeping on the sidewalk. We're not seeing them at the end of the freeway holding up a sign. they're hanging out at the libraries. They're hanging out at the city gyms where my brothers and I used to. They're hanging out at Kmart, playing on playing with the games. And so as a trial lawyer, I thought, oh my gosh, how do we have a demonstrative exhibit that allows for people to know what homelessness really looks like? So I'd gone to New York to visit a client. On my way to the airport, I had time to stop in a museum, and I had seen this multimedia art installation piece that you walked through. So I came home and I was laying in bed, and I woke up Rob 3:00 in the morning, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got the idea. I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna build the motel room from the Tropic Motel, life size. So I cold called the dean of the Claire Trevor School of the Arts at UCI and said, I have an idea. I want to build a 214 square foot motel room that's based on this motel room that my family of 6 lived in for 9 months. And I want people to walk through it so they can understand what homelessness feels like, looks like, and experience it. So we did that. We built that. We brought a reporter to do a story on it. At the same time, do you want me to go full into chapter 2?
Oh, we're already in there.
Oh,
we're
okay,
already there.
okay.
Yeah, keep on rolling. This is awesome.
So at the same time, I'm in this small group at church at St. Andrews with a bunch of women who are all in their mid to late 60s and early 70s.
Which is very common for people that are working in nonprofits because they've retired, they've got money, and they have time and energy. And then here's this 20-something, 30, whatever. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it was for me. I was thinking, what am I doing with this group of people? And retrospectively, it's because I got the gift of wisdom from these women. So I'm sharing gosh, I'm making equity partner next month, and things are going really great at work, but I'm feeling this stirring. I don't understand what it is. Well, so I'm feeling the stirring. So then we have the reporter come to UCI from the Orange County Register to do a story about the art piece. So we're sitting in the art piece, and the reporter says, this feels really personal. He's like, I feel emotional sitting in this space. How in the world did you come up with something so personal? And I said, well, off the record, I lived here for 9 months with my family of 6. And he's like, that's the story. Are you ready to tell it? And I was like, no, but I think God wants me to tell it. Because my dad had just died suddenly. So I no longer needed to protect him. And my mom and I had some honest conversations about these stirrings and me feeling like my story, I was supposed to do something with it, but I didn't know, and I didn't want to be disrespectful to her, and I loved her so much that I didn't want her to feel shame. And my story wasn't just my story, it was my brother's story. I was worried about what it would look like if I shared my story and how I didn't want it to negatively affect anyone else. And my mom was like, Robert Frost's poem, The Road Less Traveled, you just need to trust that if you feel being called onto that path, you need to take that path. So I told my story to the reporter, and it ended up on the front page of the newspaper. And back to nobody knowing about this. So the reporter was so generous. He gave me a sneak preview of it. And I got on the phone and started calling people.
All your friends.
I started calling my friends. I started calling my clients, because you know what I thought? I thought my clients were going to fire me. In my head, that they won't like you part was still showing up even though I was 42. And I thought once they find out, instead they said, I always wondered what it was that drove you. Now I understand.
Wow. A little chicken skin for me right there.
And the other people in the community, all of a sudden they see, and I was fully suited in my Brooks Brothers suit, my Hermes scarf, all my masks, they were on full display, right? So the picture is kind of funny now, because what you see now is I still like to, dress like a prep. That's still my thing. But you can see the masks. If you look at the picture, and knowing me now, you'll see it kind of in my eyes. But it changed. People didn't know what to do with the fact that they saw me and then they saw a story about homelessness. They couldn't, because they had built so many, I feel like, almost excuses for othering people experiencing homelessness. And they had crafted a whole narrative in their mind of what everyone looked like, what all their challenges and struggles were. And then they had to mix that with the fact that I was a successful partner at a law firm, that I had freckles, that I grew up here in Newport Mesa and Huntington. And I was sitting in church, and someone who's now one of my best friends, Kelly Conwisher, was preaching a sermon on Esther. And she was talking about how Esther was both Jewish, but she was also the queen. So she was able to talk to both communities. And that was the thing, that was her superpower. And God was calling her to use who she truly was in order to lead the people into a new place. And she said, God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. And at the time, as the board chair, I'd hired a search firm to find a new CEO for Project Hope.
You had gone out and pursued that.
Yeah.
As chairman of the board.
Yes.
Interesting.
And I knew in that moment that God wanted me to be the CEO. So I went home and told my husband, and he was like, what? How much does that pay? And I told him, and he was like, that's a 75% pay cut. And I said, I'm telling you, I have to do this. And so he took a couple of weeks, and he came back and he said, okay, I ran the numbers. We have enough credit that if we have to, we can live on credit for a year. So let's try it for a year. And that was 10 years ago. So when I started at Project Hope, it was me and LaShawn High sitting in desks in a multi-purpose room of one school, serving like 35 kids.
Is that right? It was just the two of you?
Yeah. And our budget was like, our program budget was like $286,000 or something.
It's unbelievable. So for all the things that I said about Rob earlier, I take it all back. He is a superhero for supporting you through that decision. It's an incredible decision of selflessness to support you through that. It's amazing.
There's no, that to me, that's what partnership looks like. Like the gift that he gave me and his love and his support. Like I'm so blessed to have him as my husband and my partner in life.
I like him a lot. I haven't met him yet, but I really like him. That was the story, the Esther story. When you told me that was one that I really wanted you to share, because it's just, I love the fact how it spoke to you. The story seems right on point, and the fact that you went home, honey, guess what? This is like what I'd like. This is what we want to do. I mean, it's powerful. Okay, so here we are, Project Hope Alliance. You've shared a lot about it, and I snapped a little, like I love elevator speeches, and I know you've got this, you're so good at this, but I just snapped what was on the website real quick. Project Hope Alliance works to end the cycle of homelessness using long-term site-based model that providing whole person care for youth experiencing homelessness. Covers a lot. Can you put that in your term? Like, take that out of like the bullet point. Turn that the elevator speech. What does Project Hope Alliance do? Why has it been so compelling for you? And then we'll talk about where you are now, because from two of you sitting in a room with a $30,000 budget to what you've done, what you're doing, and the accomplishments and the recognition are staggering. So congratulations and thank you up front, but tell us more about it.
Yeah, so basically we show up for our kids and do life with them. So we have full-time case managers that sit in their own offices on public school campuses in 3 school districts, really just making sure that when our kids show up and try, that whatever they make possible for themselves, we're there to ensure that it comes to fruition. So we know that education is that generational disruptor of poverty. A kid who's graduated high school is almost 400% less likely to experience homelessness as an adult.
Hold on. Graduate high school, 400% less likely to experience homelessness.
Yeah. So like just that one data point.
That is a huge motivator
Absolutely. And we're not making our kids smarter, right? At Project Hope. We're just actually allowing for them to live into their own strengths that they already have. So our high school graduation rate is 93%, and the state average is only 70 for students experiencing homelessness. So together as a community, we're doing some really great work. But it really is like a whatever it takes doing life with our kids. But being on campus there in real time, in real life, and in relationship with them in their own environment is the differentiator. They don't have to figure out how to get to us. We go to them. We're plugged into their ecosystem.
How many schools are you in now?
15.
Where?
Huntington Beach Union High School District. We're at Ocean View High School, Westminster High School, Valley Vista High School, and Huntington Beach High School. Go Oilers. In Newport Mesa, we're on campus at Ensign, Newport Harbor, Costa Mesa Middle, Costa Mesa High, and Estancia, and then serve all of Newport Mesa. And then we're at Santa Ana High School and 2 scholarship prep campuses in Santa Ana.
And staggering. And yet, if you listen to the names of the schools, those are a lot of the schools you go, hold on, there's homelessness in Newport Mesa? There's homelessness right here? Yeah, it's so powerful. But what an incredible accomplishment. How many people now work full-time or fully, I'm not sure the term you would use.
No, full-time.
Full-time with Project Hope Alliance.
There are 27 of us.
And your facility in Costa Mesa is stunning. So you just recently had an open house that I was able to walk through. You want to talk a bit about the facility? It was so impressive and so cool.
Yeah, we're really blessed because not only do we have all of these offices on campuses all around Orange County, but we have our hub is just right over on 19th and Placentia. And so we have great office space upstairs, but then we have a really cool community space downstairs with a pantry that is fully filled by community members, corporate partners. Ace Hardware is a huge partner of ours, which we're so grateful for with your roundup and how your employees are so engaged with our mission.
That's going on right now.
Yes, shop.
Yes.
And so we do everything from group work at our community space to having a food and hygiene pantry there for our students, especially because we serve so many teens, things like skincare products, right? If they're struggling with acne, like we keep a lot of that makeup, all of those hair products, those types of things. So it's really great. And it is a bright, happy
it is.
space.
It's a beautiful space.
Doesn't look like the DMV.
No, it is not like the DMV. And I have to say, everybody that I've met, whether during the open house or at your super cool anti-gala, which was stunning, the caliber of people and the kind of people, and I think a lot of these folks come out of the program, they're wonderful, and their ability to speak and present themselves and their passion for the cause is just so super tangible. So whatever you're doing, it is working.
Everyone is there for the kids. And I have never been so honored and humbled to work with such exceptional people in my entire life. I never dreamed that I would be blessed with this type of a work environment.
Well, good leaders build good work environments, so kudos to you. Because there was 2 of you when you started. It all starts there. A big part, and I mentioned the anti-gala, which was a fantastic.
It's a lot of fun.
Fantastic event, and raised how much? Do you know how much that raised last year?
It was over $250,000 net, which is outstanding.
And it was such a cool environment, and it was I'll be there every year for sure.
Yay.
For sure.
May, first
but let's
weekend in
talk
May.
about fundraising, because in the nonprofit world, there's nothing more important and maybe nothing more difficult, and a lot of people don't like it, won't do it. It's a conversation that's had all the time in the nonprofit world, but you guys have cracked the code, it seems, both locally and on a bigger scale, which we'll talk about. But talk about your role in fundraising and your view of that, and because it's kind of important.
It's very important because we can't do the work. It's like a car is useless if it doesn't have gasoline. So donors are the fuel that allows for the mission to move forward, right? So one of the things I can tell you is that this community, particularly the Newport Mesa parent community, is what grew our organization. And it really was driven by a lot of moms realizing The same way that Parker realized when she asked her friend for a piece of paper that their kids are sitting next to kids experiencing homelessness who they also see as their kids. Yeah. And that all of the kids in our community are really our kids. And so when we allow for every kid within the ecosystem to be their best selves, it makes it better for everyone. And so, you mentioned earlier these stupid television shows about Orange County, right? Giving us this reputation of being people who are always so self-obsessed and status-driven. That's not the Newport Mesa that I know. I know the Newport Mesa of moms and kids. Like tonight, we have a fundraiser that's being led by a student at Newport Harbor High School and a student at Corona Del Mar High School. They're doing a Battle of the Bay style.
Sorry.
Go Sailors.
Well, we're a house divided at my house.
Oh, fair. Okay. Well, sorry about the bell.
It's
We
all
finally
good.
got it back
Listen,
after 10 years.
Depending on who wins, I claim ownership of that.
True.
So we're seeking if Corona Del Mar wins, and if Newport Harbor wins, we get to claim sailor status.
Okay,
It's
that's
all
fair.
good.
That's fair. Yeah, so it's like the kids have become a part of making everything possible for the kids. And that continues to inspire me. So it is truly a grassroots, community-led effort, and everyone is invested in it, which means that we're making real and meaningful systems change because we have the buy-in of the community, which means they're paying attention when issues go in front of the school board, right? They're paying attention, they're thinking about, oh, well, how would this affect a student that maybe is experiencing homelessness? Will this make it better? Okay, it will. I'm gonna support that because I'm for the kids. And so it's really been tremendous. I never, they say we overestimate what we can do in a year and underestimate what we can do in 10.
Yep.
Yeah, this is my 10th year at Project Hope, and sitting where I'm sitting, looking at a programming budget now of like $2.8 million, serving.
Hold on. Say that number again.
2.8.
What was it when you started?
I think 286,000.
So, yeah.
Well, 30,000 when I started on the board, but
It's incredible.
yeah. And we're serving just under 400 kids. So that is because of community, right? That's because of people choosing to see each other and realizing that we really are stronger and better together. It's very amazing, and it's humbling every day. Like, I have the privilege of seeing the beautiful side of humanity all the time, and I never take that for granted.
It's pretty cool because I'm going to go back to say that, leadership drives success. Oftentimes, it takes the whole team, but without leadership and vision and passion, which you have in abundance, it might not be where it is today, but it's so great. And I'd like to just touch on some of the accolades and recognition that you guys have received. You personally and Project Hope Alliance separately are both getting a lot of recognition out there. Like, I was super happy to steal an hour and a half of your time today because I know how busy you are on all of it. But I think just recently you got a distinguished fellow at UCI Center for Psychology and Law, just recent. Is that a new one?
Yes.
And I'm going to go through the list.
Oh, goodness.
No, I'm not going to go through all. But the big one from this year was OC Business Journal Innovator of the Year. You were one of 5 winners of that. That's huge.
We're actually, so that one was very meaningful because it's the first time that a nonprofit has ever won that award, which is ridiculous to me. Because who has to be more innovative than a nonprofit? Right. You want to talk about the lean startup method? Baby, we eat, drink, and sleep that every single day.
For sure you do.
Minimum viable product. So to me, my hope would be, like they say, it's great to be the first, you never want to be the last. There are so many phenomenal nonprofit leaders that are innovating every single day. So I hope that going forward, that will become commonplace, that nonprofit leaders are recognized in that award.
It's a great message. I hope they're listening. But what a huge accomplishment, and congratulations on that one. You're on the advisory board for the Susan Samuel Integrative Health Institute since 19. I mean, that's a big thing around here. So kudos to you. There's many more, but can we talk about the big check from last year that you received? The big chicken check?
Oh, yes. So, and I don't know, have you seen the video?
Yes.
Okay.
I may have shed a tear, for real.
Well, clearly I shed a
you
tear
almost
because
fell over.
I almost fainted.
Yes.
We were selected by Chick-fil-A as the True Inspiration Award winner. So they set us up saying that they wanted to do this little video vignette for their franchisees, to like get them excited about Chick-fil-A giving. And so they, interviewed me. They wanted, because it's the organization, their faith is a big part of their organization. So they wanted me to share my personal testimony, the Esther story, all of that. So we thought we were just getting like some free chicken sandwiches, stuff like that to give to the kids. And all of a sudden, and they're like taking a picture with this big box. I'm opening, there's little cows and all this stuff. And then they say, well, don't forget the check behind you. And then they pop off these poppers. And then I turn around and look, and there's a check for $225,000. And I saw it and I thought, what? And I started counting the numbers because I thought there's no way that says $225,000. And so then I realized it, and I literally started falling. And fortunately, there was a couch behind me because I fell into the couch. And what I didn't know was that the cows, so they were the fully dressed cows, were there getting ready to catch me because I started to faint. Oh my gosh, that was just like... And the timing of that unlocked the next phase of becoming for us. It is so amazing how it is, and I say this to the team, look, our job is to show up every day, giving 110% and doing our best, keeping the kids at the center. So as long as we continue to do the right thing at the right time for the right reasons, the fundraising part, which I'm not going to lie, it's stressful, right? I don't sell chicken sandwiches. I don't sell anything. So we are reliant upon the goodness of our community and also the forward thinking of our community, because it's a great financial investment to ensure that we don't have continuing homelessness. But it is so incredible to see how things continue to not only work out, but work out like in excess of what I even have dreamt. It's amazing. It's rad.
Well, it is rad. You're rad. I mean, what a huge, again, all of those things together are just incredible testimonials. Somebody just has to bring you up online and can find all the stuff between you and Project Hope Alliance, all the accolades, all the recognition, all the good work that you're doing. I think if you go back to just the data points that you shared about the difference it makes when somebody graduates high school, 400% less likely to go into homelessness. I mean, it's staggering work that you're doing. What's more important? What could be more important than what you're doing? And it's shining a light on something that's kind of in the shadows. So huge congrats and giant thanks from the community to you.
Thank you.
A couple questions. How can people get involved?
There's lots of ways they can volunteer. We have volunteer opportunities all the time. Our anti-gala is coming up the first week in May. So coming out to that is a great thing to do during the holidays. We do 3 Santa's workshops where we actually create little stores for our parents to come in and do the shopping for their children. And then we have elves that do gift wrapping. But if folks go to projecthopealliance.org, there's a pull down saying, how can I get involved? And this really is a community-led effort. We have a lot of kids that are involved in our mission. So when you look at ending the cycle of homelessness one child at a time, that both is the child who's experiencing homelessness, but it's also the child that isn't. That's part of ending the cycle of homelessness.
Yeah. That's so great. That's so great. What's next for Project Hope Alliance?
Right now, we actually are leading a lot of the Orange County Grand Jury just released a report entitled The ABCs of Educating Students Experiencing Homelessness. I was able to serve as an advisor to that report and in true lawyer fashion provided supplemental briefing. Right now, we are doing a lot of work on the advocacy piece. There are a lot of policies that need to be changed, both at the local educational level as well as the state and federal level. So we're leaning in to our expertise in that, because we do have the leading model right now in ending generational homelessness. And we're also just continuing to deepen and build the relationships that we have within our different school districts, adding onto that, expanding our services into new districts and within existing districts. So it's a very exciting time at Project Hope right now.
That's amazing. If I had a magic wand, you get one wish of anything, it could be applied anywhere, anyway.
Oh, I hate these questions.
I know. And you don't have to answer it.
No, I will answer it.
But, maybe within the space that you operate, is there something that would be, monumental?
So I do have one thing. We need to unify the United States definition of homelessness. Because right now our public education system is operating under one definition that conflicts with the HUD definition of homelessness, which is what controls the parents of our kids. So we have parents who are not considered homeless living with kids who are considered homeless, which eliminates a lot of resources and creates a ton of bureaucracy. So that would be one thing that I think when we do it, and I'm going to say when, because we are pushing for that to happen along with a lot of our community partners. When that happens, it will unlock a lot of resources, but more importantly, systems change and integrated services for our kids.
Do you happen to know an attorney that can help you with this?
I don't know, maybe.
Got it. Well, listen, it sounded like, it's good. You knew exactly where a significant change needs to happen to benefit the group that you support. All right, we want to make that happen.
Let's do it.
Let's do that. Listen, I could go on all day with you because it's super fun. I don't want to do that. I really do want to thank you, because this is an area, again, going back to how I started it. Here we are sitting in one of the most beautiful places in the world. You know far too well what happens below, again, in the shadows, the invisibility cloak, whatever it is, and shining a light on it, helping kids change the cycle of homelessness in their families. I don't know if there's anything more important. So I just want to give you giant kudos for what you do and who you serve.
Thank you. And if I had a second magic wand, I would want every kid to know their inherent value is not controlled by any external factor. And I would want our kids that are experiencing homelessness today to know that anything is truly possible for them. And so I know that when we show up as a community, and everyone who is out there supporting Project Hope Alliance, including yourself and your family and Ace Hardware, we're letting them know that that's true. So I think that we will change the world, and our kids will change the world for better.
Well, leaders like you and having the impact that you're having is how we change the world. So Jennifer, friend, thank you so much. You are rad.
So are you, my friend.